Good evening, folks. Hi, Manjiri. We have a very special guest today, guys. We have with us Manjiri Latey. She is a facilitator in outdoor education and experiential learning, but she's better known as the country's leading practitioner in telepathic animal and nature communication. She is highly recommended. We've had some of her students on a show on our program before. Thank you so much for joining us, Manjiri.
Thank you for having me.
You are at the moment locked down in a different country. Can you tell us exactly what's going on with you?
So for the last, I think about 3 months, I was actually doing some volunteer work in Guatemala, which is a small country in Central America. And I was scheduled to be flying back home by April end. But I think there were different plans. And I'm here in the US at the moment, waiting for airspace to open and for me to get back home. Yeah. But thank you for having me here.
Oh no, it's our pleasure. You are in what part of the states are you in?
I am in a city called Portland, which is Oregon. So that's north west of the country. Yeah.
Northwest of the country. Now, you just for a small background for our audience members, you you love the outdoors. You have found with your husband, you are the founder of a company called Earthwise.
That's right.
And your husband Inderjeet is one of the leading naturalists in the country. And can you talk about your love for the nature and outdoors? And I believe you're in a part of the world which has some of the most beautiful landscape.
Yes, it does. It's a good place to be locked down, if we may call it a lockdown. But yeah, it's In going back into my journey with the outdoors, both my parents were mountaineers, so we started very early with our exposure to the outdoors. Every vacation, I remember it was always some natural landscape that we went to, and I attribute a lot of who I am or my belief system to the way my parenting happened. We had a dog with us who lived to be 18 years old. So I don't remember a single day in childhood without, four-legged family member around us. And later down the line, Indrajit, who is also a naturalist, like you mentioned, his father is also a zoologist. So even the extended family that I moved into were equally ardent or passionate about animals and nature. So yeah, it was an ideal setting and everything fit in like a hand in a glove. So yeah.
Wow, that's great. I mean, I think you spend a lot of time in and out of nature, and you grow up with that because of your upbringing, obviously, with your parents. And we just before we move ahead, guys, please hold on to your questions. We have a lot of people and we like to do a little bit of shout out for some of our people who are watching here. We have Ritika, who has been with us before. She's saying hi to you, Manjiri. We have some. So Radhika is very excited for the session. Do we need to be a spiritual or strong in mediation to become an animal communicator? Radhika, you'll hold on to that question. I think we have Manjiri. She is one of the best teachers with us. So she will answer your questions. And guys, have all your questions ready and we will get to them, all of them. So Manjiri, how long have you been doing this and how did this come about happening?
Karan, if like I mentioned right now, in terms of the upbringing or the backdrop that I had, I later went on to do a master's in outdoor education, where I was using outdoors as a medium for learning. And the field that I've spent the longest time in terms of a structured learning or practice has been NLP. So that's called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's a human behavioral science. And I've been using the outdoors for mental health or the outdoors or experiential learning as a backdrop for healing and personal work. And then about 11 years back, owing to a certain spate of incidences that happened with one of our dogs, I think that transition into telepathic communication was very seamless. And a lot of people think that outdoor education, animal communication, human behavior are all very independent, but in actuality, they are all one fabric. Because even in working with an animal, we're actually working with the humans. We can't evade or bypass the human element, whether it's wild or whether it's domesticated animals. So my backdrop in human behavior worked greatly, or rather helped the process. So this is how the journey has been so far. Yeah.
So no, it's fantastic that you have a training in NLP and what have you. But I mean, did it come naturally? Did you do research on telepathic communication with nature and animals?
Sure.
Like, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Bilkul. So the fact of the matter is, there is no real learning that needs to be done in telepathic animal communication. These are abilities that are very innate. We're all born with it. And whether we're aware of it or not, we are definitely, it's a default setting. We're all connected telepathically with everything around us, okay? However, what does help, or what helped me even in the beginning, was when we have a workshop space, so to say. I learned with about 3 or 4 teachers overseas, but the most important learning has always been with the mountain people that you interact with, the tribals you interact with, who are very rooted to reality and very in touch with everything around them. However, workshop spaces that I attended, or the ones that we facilitate or curate, so to say, are basically offering anybody, including me as a facilitator, a non-judgmental space. What that implies is, we as humans have come from a very rigid schooling system, where there is, a very stringent yardstick for right and wrong, success and failure, so on and so forth. But the minute you let people just be themselves and be okay with connecting to their inner voices, or connecting with themselves, so to say, workshop spaces like that do help. And even when I started my journey, I learned with a teacher called Maya Kincaid. There was another one called Carol Gurney. There was Kim Pickett. All of them who I learned with physically in a, let's say, in a structured manner. But I use the word structured loosely, because in the structure there is also the flexibility of exploring who we are. So in terms of formal learning, that definitely yes. However, like I said, all the years when you spend outdoors, or you interact with people who live in the mountains or live in the forest, or who live a very beautiful native life, you realize during workshops we're learning or listening to, we suddenly realize that that's exactly what we had been observing all our life, and it just puts things into perspective. The jigsaw starts fitting in, so to say.
Wow. I mean, that's fantastic. And you have so many people here who are coming and asking questions. We have Tanushri over here. She is obviously going to be a part of a workshop that I believe you're starting next week. We will speak a little bit about your workshops. We will speak a little bit about your process and how you impart all this, let's say, even though it's not a structured course, but there are workshops and there are different tiers in your workshop. And so do you want to talk a little bit about how does one go about, I mean, they contact you through Earthwise, and I'll have that information up soon. But what do you do in your workshops?
Fair. So usually we have 2-day workshops if it is done in a physical space. They're 2 full days. If it is now, we have to adapt, move with the times. It's an online process. We spread it over 3 or 4 days. But the aim basically is, there is, rather than learning, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of unlearning that needs to happen. Unlearning of a conditioned mind that tells us what we can and cannot do. So we basically start with recognizing and realizing that this comes so naturally to all of us, irrespective of our backgrounds or educational settings or whatever we may be doing on a day-to-day basis. So we start communicating with animals largely in the first 10 minutes of the workshop itself, or the process. And then we slowly build our confidence muscle beyond that, because a large part of what we do during the workshop is to start trusting ourselves explicitly, that whatever we are receiving from the animal, it is truly what the animal wishes for us to know. and just confidence building is a large part of the process. We do a lot of partnered work where the minute you get instant validation from a partner, say I'm talking to your dog, you talk to my dog, and we share what we've received, and then we work our way through it, saying, oh, I got something, and your animal says that there is a red toy, and you say, oh, there is no red toy at home. We then basically simplify it, saying you are not wrong in what you've received, but you need to go back to the animal and ask, okay, this red toy that you show me, what about this? Would you like to tell me? Just to streamline our thought process, iron out our assumptions, so to say. And then we also do a section of how to work with veterinarians when you are taking your animal for any health concerns to a vet. How should you work with them? We have a lot of veterinarians over the years who are coming on board for the workshops, and they soon realize this is exactly what they've been doing all their life. It just puts it in a perspective. And we then also do a section where how to work with wild landscapes and wild animals. So in case you go on a nature safari, or a lot of people are going bird watching, are going to nature reserves.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, this is during your workshop. Are you teaching this to people? And before we, you have different tiers, as I mentioned before, of workshops. Do you do this in your first basic workshop?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead. And then you, sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. So this is what constitutes, if for name's sake, we call it a basic workshop. And I always tell people that whether it's a basic or we call it an advanced, it's just nomenclature that doesn't define anything at all. But just for people to decide a structured path for themselves, saying, okay, I've done this, now this is like a little checkpoint for myself. What have I been able to expand and achieve? Then the next level that we've designed is what is called a residential 4-day process, where we work with elements of nature. You start balancing elements of nature within your body, elements of nature outside your body. There is landscape communication processes. We get in touch with a lot of native practices that have been going on for eons. And we unfortunately call a lot of native people backward, which is, I think, a very wrong terminology, but we call ourselves advanced, but we are far from advanced. Actually, we are light years away from any kind of advancement, so to say. The only thing probably smart in our life is our phone, and we've outsourced everything to that phone now. But in the 4-day residential workshop that we do, we're exploring further or deeper into a lot of these aspects, if that makes sense.
So obviously you have to take a basic workshop, which happen on site, or does it? Are you conducting workshops electronically or through the internet?
Sure. So ideally, it happens on site at a physical location in different cities across the country. But now we all have to adapt with what situations are unfolding around us. So we've now moved on to the online platform for larger group workshops as well. Until now, I used to do a lot of one-to-one work, a small group work online, but the larger workshops are also happening online now. So, yeah.
And you are just for most of, I think you have a lot of fans over here. A lot of people are commenting, and I'm having trouble keeping up with the comments.
Can I be honest with one thing? We all of us, and I don't like to use the word students, we are all a community together, and we all run mutual admiration committees amongst ourselves. Every communicator appreciates and acknowledges the other's work. And that's how I think we've all built this as an ecosystem, so to say.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I think we are all dependent on our support systems, but it kind of speaks volumes for you, Manjiri, that you have such a huge support system. We have an unprecedented number of people coming in who are commenting over here. I apologize, and I'm very grateful to all of you guys who because of Manjiri's, charisma and her abilities that you guys are here and meet. But we're also very thankful. Manjiri, you were based out of Pune, and how? Coming back quickly, how long have you been doing this for?
So the outdoor education and NLP work has been going on for the last almost 24, 25 years now, in terms of a professional pursuit. And the animal communication transition happened about 11 years back.
Okay. And, we have some questions, and maybe we may as well get into it.
Sure.
We have Tanushree, the storyteller. I think you may know her. Okay. She's asking, what is the largest animal that you communicated with? and are there complexities, or are they more difficult to get through?
Okay. I think large, small is a human construct, and probably the largest animal I've spoken to is an atom, or an anu, as it is called, because there is a Sanskrit shlok that says "Anu pasuni Brahmanda." That means from an anu there is an entire universe that is formed. So again, we define everything by physicality. It need not be that. So probably the largest animal I must have spoken to is an atom. Um, Again, any ecosystem we talk to, even when we speak to the ocean, it is actually literally an organism. And if you're looking at it as a large animal where the entire ocean can have its own consciousness, then it is speaking to something as large as the ocean, the large as an atom as well.
We in our pre-interview, Manjiri, we spoke a lot about how you are moving. You're not just an animal communicator. For our audience members here, most of you guys know this, but Manjiri also, we have described her as specializing in nature communication. So maybe you're talking to the landscape, you're talking to trees, you're talking to mountains. Am I correct to assume that? And can you speak a little bit about that? Like, what does that entail, and what is the applications of that?
Sure. See, there is a saying that goes that our body creates an illusion of separation from nature, implying that we think that as humans, this is where we finish and something else begins. Okay, but in actuality, it's all one fabric. So whether it's an animal, whether it's a landscape, whether it's a tree, it is all an extension of our awareness. And if you go back into applications or references, so to say, Karan, think about this. There's so many farmers. I had this farmer friend from Satara, which is a small district in Maharashtra, who used to play his flute standing in his farm. And he would always say that the crop in my field sways on my tunes. And this I heard many years back. And I say, wow, how poetic is that? And later I realized it has its own awareness. And I mean, we've done experiments in school. You take a potted plant, you take another potted plant, and you appreciate one and you don't appreciate the others. And a lot of children learn with those reference points as well, that even trees and plants have their own consciousness and awareness. And some of the earliest experiences I remember with landscape specifically is very, very young. We were hiking through the Himalayas in a certain range. It's called the Pindari Kafni Glacier. Now it's become this huge phenomena, but way back in early 80s, it was a very lesser known space. And I remember we were traversing this huge ice field. And we have this mountain dog. So those of you who have explored the mountains, you'll know generally when you're gallivanting up, kahin se to one mountain dog comes up and accompanies you very selflessly all through the mountain range. And we were traversing this ice field. There was a mountain dog right in front with us, and then there was a mountain guide. And this dog went up ahead. He stopped and he turned around and he ran back. And the mountain guide just told us all of us have to turn around. And I remember questioning at that time. I asked my father, I said, what is the reason? Why are we turning around? He says, no question asked. The mountain dog and the mountain guide know exactly what's happening. So we turned around, and when we came to a site of shelter, we asked him, I said, I'm very inquisitive. What was this? He said, nahi, kutta janta hai aur main janta hu ki yahan bhi avalanche aane wala hai. And there were no signs of anything happening there. The dog and this man. So it was not just the dog's ability to sense something, but it was that mountain man's ability to know exactly what the dog was wanting to guide for. And we turned around, and thankfully we were saved off a large avalanche there. Yeah.
Wow. So the avalanche came, is what you're saying. It
yes,
happened.
Physically. And I'm sure there are so many people who've been exploring nature reserves, mountains, or even do gardening at home. You don't need to go into a large landscape. You're doing gardening at home, and you're fully aware. Those people who we say have green fingers actually are talking to their plants even when they're planting a sapling. So it is, when I said we're all born with it, that is the reality. We don't need to learn. We just need to start trusting more.
I completely agree. We're gonna come. Thank you so much for it's. I hate interrupting you.
No worries.
Manjari, we have people asking questions and people getting upset that I'm not taking up. Radhika, we will come to your question. We appreciate your patience. We have Neera Nath here who's asked a question. I lost one of our grown-up pups, given to a friend 2 years back. He was picked up and taken up to Punjab. If looked high and I looked high and low, I have to meet him. Please suggest a way to connect. I am very, very intuitive. I think maybe I'll take up the suggestion. Maybe Neera, you should contact Manjiri directly, and she may be able to help you with that. I'm going to let Manjiri answer the rest of the question.
Sure. So as I gathered, she's posed a question that she lost one of her grown-up pups, right? Let's work with 2 or 3 aspects of this question posed. A lot of us humans, our sense of self comes from being providers. Our sense of self comes from having somebody being dependent on us. So even when we get a dog, a pup at home, and he grows up into adulthood, we still continue calling them pups, or ye mera bachcha hai, ya ye, mera baby hai, because we like somebody being dependent on us. Okay, so point number 1 is, even if he's a grown up, and we, rather than calling it a pup, we should say this dog, right? They also appreciate and acknowledge when somebody gives them respect for their age and maturity. Second important thing, animals or nature around us, if you see whatever is unfolding, especially in the last 4 to 5 odd years, is a reflection of what is happening inside us. Okay, so when an animal is so-called lost, it need not be lost. There are many times where they leave by choice. They may choose to go, or even if they are lost, sometimes they come back and say, my human is also lost in life. So they are literally mirroring the internal state of the human. I'm not saying it is happening with the individual who's posed the question. I'm just enumerating the possibilities in scenarios like this. The human is also lost. He's a complete space cadet. He has no idea why he's doing what he's doing in life. And somewhere in searching for that animal, the human gets in touch with some abilities of himself that he probably never knew existed. Okay. Another thing, I have searched high and low. I don't know what else to do. And if the same individual, if I gather it right, has said that she is very intuitive. Okay, he or she is very intuitive. It is a matter of just sitting down one day and just asking the animal, what would you like me to do if you want me to do anything? Okay, because we assume a lot of the times in cases like this, or even rescue work, that the animal ought to be rescued because we feel we have rescued this animal, again, sense of self fed by that. But like a human, it is imperative we ask this animal, do you want me to even find you? If you would like me to find you, how would you like me to find you? What is your guidance on that? And you don't really need an animal communicator to do that for you. Especially when somebody acknowledges that they are incredibly intuitive, it is a matter of them trusting that. There are so many humans when, in cases like this, when the animal, they hear it, the communicator also tells them that the animal says, leave me be. When the time is right, our paths will cross again. The human has a sense of loss, and the loss is of the physical presence with the animal. They can or cannot be with you physically, but you can still be connected to them. And this, somewhere people are still figuring how to cross that bridge, that I can't be stuck to a bodily form, but I can connect, if that answers the individual's question.
Well, I think she had a very specific question. I think, Neera, you should contact Manjiri directly if you want to get more in depth into it. She has fantastic workshops, and these are great opportunities. She can't take very specific questions on this forum. I think you will have to set up some kind of a session with her directly, and she'll be able to further elaborate what she's saying. But as a general point, what you're saying, Manjiri, is fantastic. It's something that Radhika has also asked right now, and we have a question on the screen. Do you need to be spiritual or good in meditation to become an animal communicator?
Good question. I think I made a note of it where somebody earlier had also asked about being a spiritual medium. Somebody had posed a question earlier. Good question, Radhika. Let's even reframe or revisit what is the concept of spiritual, good, or a medium. Okay. A lot of us confuse religious with spiritual. you could be spiritual in something very simple. So, for example, even in this lockdown, a lot of aspects of one's spirituality have emerged, okay, through the tussles that have happened. So, if you revisit your individual concept of spirituality rather than fitting into some cookie cutter reference point that has been laid out, you could feel spiritually connected if you're just walking barefoot somewhere. Okay, so that's probably what spiritual could mean for an individual. Is meditation necessary? Again, being meditative or being in a meditative state is very individualistic. There are
Uh-huh.
yardsticks that have been laid out that sit cross-legged, shut your eyes, concentrate on something, and don't let any thought come in your mind. And you realize that thinking is an innate ability of the mind. So to stop the thinking is going against what the mind is made to do, right?
Uh-huh.
But
Yes.
if you identify what meditation means for you individually, it could be going for a solo walk. Meditation could mean cooking for somebody. Meditation could mean listening to something, composing something, going for a run, going for a cycle ride. Each one needs to identify what puts them in a zone, so to say. That could be meditative in its own way. That could, recharge your batteries. And so is meditation by the commonly known yardstick necessary? Probably not. But if you choose to do something that you're passionate about, that gets you in a zone, what is most important here, Karan, is a sense of surrender. So the
Uh-huh.
minute you're permitting yourself to surrender to something, surrender to goodness coming to you, surrender to divinity flowing through you, surrender to spiritual energies flowing through you, the minute that happens, you are already a medium. So her question, I think, also has, how can I become a better medium? Do I need to meditate? And what is the concept of spirituality? So I hope
Yeah.
I have ticked off the three boxes, but
I think I
anything that
think
puts you in a surrender.
I think you have really answered that question really well. What is happening right now? I think you can see some of the comments also, Manjari. We have a lot of. I have feel like some of your students are here also, and they are taking up. And I
Colleague.
love that. No, that's fine. I love that about this forum, and thank you guys for doing that. We have people answering questions on behalf of you, and we are very
Awesome.
happy because
Thank
the
you, guys.
enthusiasm and excitement people have to be a part of this. Keep doing that, guys. Only thing is, guys, here's a request from me because we would like to put some of these questions up. Please keep your questions short. I can't go through all of them. I apologize. I'm going to try very hard because we have a very special guest with us, and she wants to answer all your questions. She doesn't have all the time, so please keep your questions short. Don't make them very verbose or long. So at least we can take them up. Soha has asked. Soha Kulkarni has asked, and I guess it's an important question in terms of the recent coronavirus epidemic that we're going to pandemic. There are a lot of dogs that are being lost, and any message for the humans with pets locked down in their homes, lost. Is
Yeah,
there something like is it interesting time for the dogs? Like,
if we even first identify the reason behind, which a lot of people have gotten in touch with, I don't know whether it's posted over here already because I can't see the stream of questions, but what is the reason for this virus outbreak to even happen? And then what is its effect on the humans, if we can address it that way? Nature has a way of balancing things out. Okay, and the minute, just take a seesaw for example, okay, and you have a pivot or a fulcrum in the middle, and ideally you would want everything to be balanced out. All right. However, when any one element exceeds or the weight on one side becomes really high, to maintain that balance, the fulcrum needs to shift. I hope you guys understand that. So exact center pe hai, so equal weight on either side, 50 and 50 works. But in case any one side starts becoming an 80 and there's a 20 on the other side, the fulcrum shifts, okay, so that the balance still remains. When that happens, there are a lot of energetic shifts happening around us. Viruses also have their own consciousness, and a lot of us as communicators, when we have spoken to the virus, and a lot of people sitting at home have probably understood that this is something where we need to redefine what normalcy means. When we say we're going to get back to normalcy very soon, maybe it was that normalcy that caused it, and man is the real virus, and the virus and everything around us can be actually doing a great job. So that's one part of this current situation, that there is probably a certain balance coming up. What are the reasons for a lot of pets to run away? More than running away, a lot of pets are being abandoned because, again, there is so much social media bombardment that's happening about misconceptions that there are about pets being carriers, so on and so forth. However, when there is a lot of discord, a lot of families are pushed to suddenly be with each other, share space with each other, which they've never really done. It's been easy to bury yourself in a phone or in routine. And now suddenly families are coming together. I know a lot of families are stepping on each other's toes. And there is a lot unfolding within the ecosystem of a house. The minute the animal recognizes that there is something happening here and that needs to be diffused or that needs to be changed or restructured, the animal then plays the role. So sometimes it happens that these animals are like messengers that come into our lives as higher beings or higher consciousness that help reset things. So yeah, sometimes if they are choosing to leave home, it's because they want to give us a new direction of thought rather than fuel fighting. There is a fueling of searching for something, and in searching for the animal, they're searching for more peace and coordination in their own family. So there can be many reasons for that.
Wow. We have, thank you for that, Manjiri. You all getting these, you're enlightening our audience. You're giving me also tips to think about. And we're very grateful to you for that.
Thank you.
And Nupur Godbole is asked a question about a paralyzed rescue puppy. The doctors can't figure out what's wrong with the puppy, and all the tests are negative. She wants to connect with you, but do you have any points for her before she does that?
Absolutely. If I understood, it's a rescued puppy and the doctors can't figure out what's wrong. Okay. There is a necessity for us to sometimes understand even the metaphors that animals may present in their body. If it is paralysis of something, basically it means non-functioning of something or a non-functioning of an ability. If you even ask the animal and understand, he probably wants you to paralyze some parts of your thinking, which is paralyzing your life, actually, if that makes sense. That means there is a belief system that's holding you hostage, so to say, and paralyzing many quarters of your life. And the animal sometimes just takes it on to himself to say, this is what's happening with you, what's happening with me. You change, I will also change. So it can be that. It can be numerous other aspects that have to do with the animal's own health, own journey, genetics. There are many other backgrounds to it. So it will be worthy of having a chat with the animal and identifying. And it is literally like you ask a human, do you know the causes for what's happening with you? And they will share far more.
So there you go, guys. So just you guys are asking very specific questions. Manjiri has the gift of telepathy, but she will need some more information from your side. Her email is right there in front of you. Contact her. Specific cases and all, please set up an appointment with Manjiri, and she's more than happy to help you out. Let's just ask a few more questions, and then we'll get back to your journey, Manjiri. We have. Let's see. Let me find. Thank you guys for all your questions. I'm just going to select something fast. Wow, that's a big question, Radhika. We have Tanmay who's saying she's missing you, and he was waiting to have endless cups over some cup. Okay, so we have Sandeep asking, how is telepathy involved in the art of talking with pets? Well, maybe it's a very basic question. Please take that.
Sure. So I think Ritika, a colleague of mine who was with you all earlier in the week, covered it beautifully, where telepathy, if you split the term up, tele basically means long distance, okay? And we have a telephoto lens, you have a telescope, so on and so forth, or a telephone, where it means something that happens, or a sharing of information that happens over a longer distance. It is exactly what happens with humans is what happens with animals. And is it an art? Yes, probably we can call it an art because it is a form that you can develop and build even more with personal trust. So exactly like you would, so if you're not having a conversation with a human right now, face to face, but you already have internal references of every sense. Okay, that means even with our eyes open, if we were to think of how our cupboard looks or how our house looks, even if we're away from home, we have an internal reference of a visual and auditory, there is a bodily sensation, there is a taste, so on and so forth. So when we're talking to either a human or an animal over a long distance where they're not with us physically, largely these internal senses act as the gateways of receiving stuff or a gateway of receiving information. So,
Okay.
for example, you may get an image in your head, you may hear a sound which even seems like your own voice, but you need to trusting that it is the animal answering to you. You could have bodily sensations. So, it's usually an internal reference to receive telepathy or receive information with an animal or a man or landscape or whatever.
And so that leads, this question was asked before, Sandeep's question. How do we differentiate between our imagination and actual communication? I guess people would be a little skeptical if they would ask a question like that.
Absolutely. A very good question.
Especially when they don't get validation. So
absolutely. Now, validation is something, again, we are very stuck with as humans that, bachpan se we're saying, am I right? Am I right? We even train a dog by saying, okay, good boy, bad boy. These are our concepts of good and bad, and these are our structures of validation. Okay, so let's move validation to the side for now. But even if we go in understanding the differentiation between communication that we're receiving and imagination, imagination has a large part of what we are making up. So we are like the architect or the constructor of doing something. So imagine your future, imagine something. That means we are in control of what we are designing in our head, right? Communication, on the other hand, is if I have asked you a question, for example, Karan, and I hear an answer, then I know clearly who I have asked the question to and who is answering. So in that case, though it may use visuals and things like that that are similar building blocks for imagination, I know who I've asked the question to, who I'm receiving from. In imagination, I'm fully aware of the fact that I'm constructing something in my head. Okay. The root of all this is intention. If my intention is to ask a question to somebody, then I know that is what the answer is. If my intention is to construct something by myself, then that is what I'm receiving, because there is a very basic phenomena that energy is following thought. So where my intention is, that is going to dictate what I'm receiving. If that answers.
It does actually. And I think that answers Parul's question also. How do you know you're actually talking to the right animal? So I would imagine that would be the similar answer to that.
Yes.
Also, through your process, I think we spoke with Ritika about this also. And you, would you, let's say someone contacts you, like I would contact you about my dog Pasha, and I say, I want to know what Pasha is thinking. How would I go about doing that? Or what is the information that you would require from me?
Nice. Karan, when I originally started my journey, I used to be very stuck with photographic references. That's how I had learned. And some of the early workshops we conducted as well, I realized that's what I was passing on. And then I reframed and corrected that, because when we're talking to an animal, a pictorial reference is not always a necessity. Okay, if the family is able to share it, great. Okay, but typically in a consultation, how I personally do it is I have the family with me live on a call, a video call or an audio call. What I encourage them to send me before the call goes through at a decided date and a time is a picture of the animal if they have it. More importantly, what is it that they wish to address with the animal? So a certain framework of what they want. Is it health concerns? It is just to check in. Is it because there are certain behavioral things that they want to address? So I know what is their intention of going ahead with this call. And when I'm on a call with them, it's free flowing, like you're talking to a human. I encourage the family to be a part of the conversation as well. And then based on what the animal is sharing, more questions come up. And then we keep addressing that in a stipulated time frame then. Yeah.
Okay. So Tanushree asked, like, how much does distance matter when communicating with any animal?
Again, it's I will quote a concept of physics, but it's very relative. It is what you are defining, because even for animals, time and distance continuums are very irrelevant. It doesn't really matter how far. Maybe the distance is in the head. You could be sharing space with a human being, but you could be very distant from them in your head. So it is just here. It is what you, and when I say here, I mean entire physicality, because somewhere our education system again trains us to navigate through the head. But ye jo
Uh-huh.
gut feeling hai, which is actually the larger brain, and we have this something called as a vagus nerve that connects. So distant from somebody is a gut feeling. So whether the animal is physically with you or far away, very irrelevant. It's from here or here, gut and brain.
It's interesting. Preeti has asked us a good question. It's actually coming up. It helps me form part of the topic of our conversation today. She's asking, shouldn't animal communication be mandatory part of animal behavior and training? Where together with logic and reasoning, there's an extra mile covered in deeper understanding about animal feed, dogs and cats included. So let me rephrase that question a little bit, Preeti. Thank you for indulging me, Manjiri. We spoke about this in the pre-interview about how nature and animal communication can have practical benefits for people like vets, people like animal behaviorists, trainers, even the owners, obviously.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the benefits? And I think that's what Preeti is trying to allude to.
Absolutely. Preeti is a brilliant, I think she was with you all a couple of days back. She's a brilliant behaviorist. I think she specializes in socializing of dogs. So, like I said, we all run mutual admiration committees amongst ourselves. But I completely understand the question or where she's coming from as a thought process. Karan, honestly, I think even before structured ways of, say, telepathic communication or structured ways of behaviorist, veterinary science, before all this came up, think about a time in era, for example, when we were growing up or when our parents were growing up, we always had pets around us. And there was nobody to come and train them. There was nobody to come and do behavioral training for them. There was nobody to do communication. But we were brilliant, all of us. I mean, for generations, people have trusted what they have got. So I think intuitively we already know how to work with an animal. Okay, but now that we are in a society or a system where we have defined roles for everybody, Preeti is absolutely right, because a lot of behaviorists, when I say lot, I mean all behaviorists, all canine trainers, all equine trainers, veterinarians, anybody working in this space, or even rescuers for that matter, intuitively already know that they are receiving something from the animal. It is just a matter of them moving into a space of awareness and trusting it a little bit more. Okay. Probably what ought or can be done is start even from schools, where we have trusting your gut feeling, a subject, and then incorporate it even into other methods, whether it is veterinary science, whether it is behavioral training, whether it's canine work, equine work, whatever. Start incorporating it from the point of view that trust what you are getting intuitively, rather than just what a book will define. So if we start doing that more, it works wonders. There are many vets who are on are in these workshops, and I honestly always invite them with open arms, because these guys have a sea of knowledge, and there can be so much how do you say, transference of learning or co-sharing that can happen, saying, wow, this is what your experience has, this is what the animal is saying, now let's join the dots. So should it be made mandatory? Beautiful. If it can, nothing like it, because as humans we sometimes don't like what is made mandatory, but if we incorporate it into the process of how we're doing things, ideal way of managing.
Yeah, wow. So, I mean, there are real world benefits beyond just communicating with you. I'm talking about for professionals as well. As you have already said, vets, animal behaviorists, a whole host of different professionals. Tell me, you must have faced a lot of criticism for this, especially for people who have the degrees, who have gone to medical college, who have got certificates from professional organizations. So can you tell me about that? Like, how do you navigate that without being too getting too in depth into it? How do you navigate that world? It talks a little bit about that would be adversity for you a little bit, and talk about your journey in that.
Sure. Not in adversity. It's a learning curve for everybody. Okay.
Yes.
And
Well, that's the matter of how people
I
look at it.
understand.
Look at it
Absolutely.
when they're
Absolutely.
going through it, it's adversity.
Yes.
You have the power of.
Absolutely. True, true, true. A good question, Karan. And I think a lot of people, whether they are veterinarians with degrees, they are medical doctors with degrees, or they could be telepathic communicators. I think everybody receives flack for what they are doing every time they want to reinvent something or they want to bring up a fresh outlook on something. But I think personally for me, I acknowledge that each individual, however critical they were of this, were operating from a standpoint of their belief system and their experiences, because
Mhm.
our values and beliefs are defined by the experiences and the training we've had, right? They are the tenets of it. When an opportunity presents itself for them to look at something differently, they are very open to it, but they are going by the dominant conditioning that has happened. So I've always actually been very open, welcome to criticism, because maybe it's a blessing that they have brought up something that has never crossed my mind, and say, wow, I never thought of it like that. And
Uh-huh.
it's been smooth sailing. I personally, I don't think it's such an issue,
Uh-huh.
because there is every viewpoint is required. Even if you take your body, for example, if you go with the subtle body, we have what is Ida and Pingala, which means the lunar and the sun nadis, which are balancing us. There is a moon and a sun, or a cool and a hot. So
Uh-huh.
something to remain in balance, you always need maybe two extremities. So it's
Uh-huh.
good to welcome a completely new viewpoint. If it's critical, it's critical. I mean, great. It's keeping everything going. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of close to a question that Jagan who's asked, what is science behind telepathy? Uh, I mean, there has to be. I mean, you have done NLP and all, so there has been some kind of research done behind it. So, do you want to speak very briefly about that, about
Absolutely.
NLP and how that has contributed?
Sure. NLP is a human behavioral science or a process. And I think Jagan specifically would also like some light thrown on science behind telepathy as itself.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Telepathy has been debated for many, many years because a lot of people believe it can't be quantified, like a lot of other things can be quantified. But there is enough evidence of the fact, and it is being documented. You can look up the website of a gentleman named Rupert Sheldrake,
Rupert.
Rupert Sheldrake, who is a PhD, and he's a member of a noetic sciences team. Okay. And he is documenting a lot of things. He has some beautiful books, TED Talks, where they are quantifying so-called telepathy cases. Okay. But one of
Uh-huh.
the something very close to home is a mathematician, if I remember his name, Nagarjuna, who the concepts he wrote down, okay, sitting in a temple in South India, um, are now being debated by modern physics, black hole theories. And he kept saying, this has not originated inside me. He never took ownership of that. He said, it is coming from far beyond me. It is coming to me. I'm a medium to start receiving. Nobody
Mhm.
questioned that. Today, mathematicians are, I mean, they're in a tizzy to identify everything that he is structured. Telepathy has existed in many other forms and now is getting quantified. Whether something is a science or not, probably we typecast something. Let's call it a practice, a way of being. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I think that's something that Rishika has also alluded to today. Yeah, I mean, it maybe comes off a little bit as critical, but is animal communication, is it a modern form of shamanism?
Sure.
I would
Shamanism.
before you answer that, I would like to add a little bit of my own thing. You know, witch doctors and traditional, shamanism was always construed as, were the real persons of hope. They're the people that used to give hope in the old times, and our modern practices have kind of evolved from that. So, I mean, let's not completely discount them. And that's my part. Let the expert answer this now.
No, nobody is an expert. We're all evolving. That is the beauty of it. And but it's a good question. Is it a modern form of shamanism? If you understand what shamanism means, it's basically a let's say a belief system or a practice of oneness with nature and taking wisdom from everything around us, and man is only a conduit for that to happen. So there is, if wisdom coming from animals, there is wisdom coming from nature, so on and so forth. Is that very contextual in today's modern day life? Then yes, by that definition, I think, can it be called modern shamanism, if we would like to call it that, because we are conduits to receive something.
Can you just quickly tell people what shamanism is?
Sure. So shamanism basically is an ancient practice, an ancient belief. And when I say ancient, I basically mean it's been around for a very long time. It's wisdom that got documented greatly, especially with the natives who lived in Central and South America, where the colonies and before the colonization happened, they were living beautifully as one fabric with everything around them. We still have shamanic practices where nature's wisdom is being used by tribals in our own country. Every part of the country, they're using it. You take something like Chhattisgarh, you take our Northeast. If you take even, the concept of the Chakravyu, if you look up on the internet how the Chakravyu is drawn from our own, concepts of, some call it mythology, some call it history, let's say our backdrop, okay? The concept of the Chakravyu, the way it's drawn, is exactly what is found in drawings and imprints with the Mayans and the Incas. That's exactly what's found in other parts of the world as well, where implying that this wisdom was always around us. That man, wherever distant they were from each other, were in tune and one fabric. We are now more far away than ever before from everything. But it's needed now for us to go back to our roots.
Can you, Hussein, we'll come back to your question, or we haven't missed it yet. You have told in our pre-interview, we were speaking about how there are similarities between, and you just alluded to it right now, between the tribals of India versus where you were in Guatemala and you were volunteering on a coffee plantation, and you were talking about practices. And I'm sorry, I apologize to our viewers that I couldn't have the photos up. We weren't able to do it. I'm technologically challenged, so I apologize. So, Manji, can you talk a little bit about the similarity that you have noticed between your time, because you traveled a lot. I remember you said you traveled to Indonesia also, you traveled to different countries. Talk about the similarities and what does that mean to you between different people and nature and what have you?
Sure. I think I count myself as really lucky and blessed to even have a partner like Indrajit who's equally crazy about traveling the world and exploring and expanding awarenesses. There is nothing better than travel to be a great teacher. I think the intentions in every travel is not merely photo ops and seeing a place, but to understand the fabric of the belief system of that land. See, every language, every land, every culture has its own history and an imprint, and it's lovely to explore that. So whether it was the forest in Indonesia, whether it was some I had family living there, so I was able to explore Taiwan. I lived and worked in Iceland many years back, where before it became such a huge tourist destination. And even there, all the Incas, the Mayas, the civilizations in Central America, or even Africa for that matter, you realize that wherever you go, it's only physicality that changes in terms of skin color and how we look outwardly. But inside, human nature has the same consciousness, has the same ability. And it is us realizing that it is all one. We may call it the butterfly effect, or we may call it whatever. But if you see even animistic practices of taking nature as God, rather than facing a wall like we've all been conditioned now through our current practices. If you go to the Northeast, say Nagaland, some pockets of Manipur, Meghalaya, my God, what gorgeous, genuine souls, human beings, and if you speak to their elders who are now 90 plus, they all speak of sitting under a tree, and that was their shamanic practice, that was their animistic practice, sitting under a tree and taking wisdom from everything around them. That's
Uh-huh.
identical to what I found was being done with the native populations in Central and South America. That's identical to what people in Africa do. That's identical to where the Nordic people are living. That's all they did. Okay, so an
Do you,
example. Yeah, go on.
yeah, do you feel that, and Hussein will come to your question, don't worry, I haven't forgotten it. Do you feel, do you feel that we have lost something in our this rush towards modernity, towards technology, towards making money, towards they call it the proverbial rat race. Are we missing something? And has this epidemic, this pandemic that we're going through, does this give us time to do some introspection? You want to speak a little bit about that?
Beautiful. Yeah, good question, Karan. I think the minute the thought begins, the change begins. So even if somebody has the thought that, am I missing something? The change has already started. You start looking for what could be missing. Okay, so
Uh-huh.
brilliant. If anybody even has that thought, the change has started.
Uh-huh.
But
Well,
yes,
honestly, again, just to interrupt, we have very little choice. It's only today that India is kind of opening up. That's what we have
yay.
realized right now, which opening up. But we didn't have much choice in this, Manjari. We were forced to sit in our houses for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But human minds wander, and my mind wandered to the fact that do we really need to do some introspection
Yes.
and change
Yes.
our approach?
Undoubtedly. Even when people speak about injustice to animals and what we're doing to the planet, wildfires, whatever it may be, I believe somewhere, and I think some people have said this statement is controversial, but I believe it truly, that maybe man is God's design. पहले मुझे लगता था कि man is God's design gone wrong. What are we doing to everything around us? And now I think I've come to a realization that maybe for something new to begin, something more profound or a higher awareness to arise, the first needs to end. Then something will rise from it, or
Okay.
something, when one learning curve finishes, the next will begin. Maybe man is God's design to finish everything off so beautifully on this planet or whatever, so that maybe a higher consciousness will rise through that.
You have the ability to put this in a way, and we had some of our commenters and guests who were saying that your voice is so nice and they love listening to you, and you said something a little profound right now, and everyone is very happy to hear it, but it's profound what you're saying. It's a little bit it's a bit dark also. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear it, and we're happy to have this. Let's move on to Hussein's question before he gets upset with us. To be an animal communicator, how important it is to do your course or a course. Can people work on themselves and nurture their intuitive capability and manage to communicate?
Beautiful. Hussein, that's a very good question. We did cover a bit of it right in the beginning of the call, but I'm happy to revisit that again. Is a workshop necessary to become aware of your telepathic abilities? Definitely not. Whether it's any human, we're already born with it. It's a matter of us starting to trust. But the only thing probably a workshop space will help provide is a space of non-judgment and support, where everybody realizes we're equally boo in the head, we're all walking this path together, and I'm not the only one who feels intuitive, or I'm not the only one who's receiving things. That's probably the only support system. So sangam sharanam gacchami, so it's a sangha that will be offered. That's the only thing probably a workshop will do. But is it imperative? Definitely not. Probably the best workshop space is for you to get in touch with people who are living that every day. It could be going and staying in a village, or going and staying in a wildlife space, and just observe what they are doing and start embodying it. So if that answers the question.
Manjari, you have been alluding to, and you've been referencing Sanskrit shloks and sayings. I, per se, have absolutely no ability in Sanskrit. I was not very good at it in school. Can you talk about is that something that you were naturally attracted towards? How did that happen?
I think again,
Left field, this is not part of our question that we
sure,
discussed.
sure. It's all
Something I
connected.
think
it's all connected. In my mind, it's all connected. Even the question, if it's cropped up in your head, it's cropped up in somebody else's head, and you're a mere medium to voice that. You never know. But again, my affinity for Sanskrit or Sanskrit shlokas definitely attributed completely to my parenting and upbringing, where we would chant every evening, basically from the point that it helps you be centered, helps you be more here and now than ever before. Um, I think my affinity for it grew over the last 10 or 15 years more, because in NLP we work on linguistics and how linguistics have a bearing on our mental, physical state, physical body, subtle body, so on and so forth. And then you realize this wisdom in our scriptures, whether it is the Quran, the Bible, the Gita, our Puranas, whatever it may be. These ancient scriptures have so much wisdom in it. What is the need for us to write and recreate something new when it's already there? And it is us revisiting it and understanding what was the thought of that more evolved man before modern man. What was the thought process behind that, and get in touch with that. And I think when probably, Karan, if you were to receive something as knowledge and information, if not Sanskrit shlokas, probably it's coming to you through other mediums. So the shlokas or the study could be one. It's like you're going grocery shopping, you need bread. You need bread. You may get it from anywhere. Maybe for somebody it is through shlokas, and through somebody else, that knowledge and that wisdom, if I may use that analogy. So maybe when your time is there, it might align for you. But yeah, I think I'm personally feeling more gravitated to it over the last few years more, because there is incredible wisdom in what's written in our scriptures.
Do you go out, and obviously you, as you said, you gravitated towards it. You go out and you study the scriptures, I would imagine. Is there something that you would like to, because you referenced 2 3 already?
Right.
Is there something that you live by, or you feel a specific affinity towards?
I think even what's in the shlokas and every word, for example, if somebody is, pardon me for saying this, but if somebody is abusing somebody, suddenly a word has a lot of power and value, and you realize that word has a wisdom or a power to make you feel a certain way. Okay. The minute you recognize that, probably something that needs to complete you, something that needs to balance you, a shloka might attract you. A verse from, I know a friend who suddenly said, the Quran was lying in my house for years. I would just say whatever was required by what was told by my parents. And he said, suddenly one day I felt that I must just go open up the Quran, and the verse over there was what I needed for the day, for that day. And I know a lot of people do that with books. It could even be a story book, and you set an intention and you open the book, and that's where your answer is.
I
Yeah,
have lots of books here. I just sometimes open a book and I just say, let's see, this is
exactly.
the word for the day today, and let that decide. Let's not
Right.
have a
So
agenda.
so somebody may use something like that, or somebody may use a certain shloka that attracts you, because there's a vibration to every word, there's a vibration to way the stances are composed, and maybe that is what is required to make you feel more balanced, to make you feel more aligned, to make you feel more, the question a lot of people ask, what is my purpose in life? Your purpose could be to just surrender to what is meant to be. If we don't surrender and we keep fighting and questioning everything, that may not come about. So it could be any shloka. Is there a shloka that needs to be identified? Maybe I would work from my concept of it. So I wouldn't want to put out anything. If something attracts somebody, that's what they should explore more of.
What I'm getting from you is that you have your own personal journey, and you have spent a lot of time living it. And everybody has to go through their own journeys. And even though I asked you for a specific affinity to it, other people have to find it out for themselves.
Exactly.
I'm getting from you, and that's very important. We have had you on for an hour, Manjiri. We are going to we're going to ask our audience members for a few more questions, and we are going to let you go, because we know you're very busy. And before I do let you go, I'm going to ask you this thing: what are your learnings? You've been doing this for a long time now, 20 plus years. What is there something you would like to share with our audience members? Something that you already have not, or something that is so obvious?
Um,
Sorry to put you on a spot like that.
no. I love being in waters where I feel that, oh, I haven't thought of this in a while. So I'm more than happy to answer these questions. I think, with your permission, I'm just going to use a Sanskrit word here of chitta. Chitta means our consciousness, or our mind for that matter. I think one of my biggest learnings is, if you take the word chitta, it either becomes chintan or it becomes chinta, which are commonly known words, okay? Where chintan is to contemplate on something and chinta is to worry about something, but they both come from chitta, which is the mind. Probably there was a part of my life, maybe schooling period, where there was a lot of chinta happening, and I was worrying about, I want to do more in sports, and why am I made to sit in a classroom? And I think I went through that tussle. And then I think the turning point is to surrender, to just surrender, to let something flow, for something to unfold. If you ask me and my husband, what have we planned for the next 5 years? We have no idea. Maybe something calls out, and that's what we will do. That's what we are going to go with. So, probably surrendering to a certain flow to just happen and evolve is a very important thing. And I learned it from nobody else but nature and animals, where they just surrender to let something happen. And it's, unfortunately, as modern man, we think surrender has a vulnerability associated with it, but surrender can be a very intentful surrender to something. The other thing I definitely have learned, one of my biggest learnings, is to be egoless. Animals and nature and mountains have no concept of ego. In fact, anything they destroy and shatter your ego, because we are nothing in front of the magnitude of what we have around us. So
Absolutely.
surrendering and being as ego free as possible. Um, Also, even if you look at the great people who've walked this earth, even we are surrounded by them now. If you take the example of Eliud Kipchoge, I don't know if you are aware
Yes.
of him, but he ran the
I wear pink shoes today and I ran. I have photos to prove
yeah.
it. And I'm a
So
big fan. I'm going to show, because, and I'm going to show people this. Go ahead with your example.
yeah.
I'm going to, this is from
So
today.
Eliud Kipchoge is a Kenyan incredible runner who just broke a record that was never thought possible. Yay!
That's me today, guys. Pink shoes.
Brilliant, brilliant. But
They're not Nikes, guys, but they're pink shoes. I'm a big fan of Kipchoge.
is it a endorsement of any nature happening for the brand? No, just kidding.
I
But
wish I'm no good at it. I wish.
if you look at, when we ask this question, the reason I even bring up Eliot in this case in terms of learnings is, there is a lawnmower going on outside. There might be some background noise.
Correct.
Eliot mentions a statement. He says, "No human is limited," implying that we have an extended mind. We go beyond what is, and we have the capability of going beyond what somebody said sometime cannot be done. Eliot also goes on to say that I live my life a certain way. If it is meant to inspire somebody, great, but it has nothing to do with fame. And I think the biggest learnings we also have from people like this, or even nature, is nature and everything around us is living life the way they think it is, and we are meant to feel inspired by it. They have no ego. They are not saying, I am here to say, praise me. No, Mount Everest does not say, come here to praise me. We want to go there for our ego to go conquer it. It's never calling us. So just there is greatness around us in human, animal, nature form. So to accept that, so surrender, be egoless, and be grounded and accepting of wisdom around us, I think could be, or rather, are for me some of the most evolving learnings, because learnings keep getting added and evolve.
Well, I'm so glad to have you, Manjari. Before we let you go, we have one more question, and it's the last question for today, guys. Before we get to it, you have raised a very important person. I take a lot of inspiration from Eliud Kipchoge. I request all our audience members to see a recent article on him by, I think it was the BBC or the New York Times, and he talks about how down to earth this human being is. If you go, he lives on a farm. He goes on and he runs every day, and he goes and he cycles to pick up milk from his neighbor. And this person doesn't care about the money. He cares about his family and living in Africa, and how he is managing. Beautiful piece. I'm so glad you brought it up, Manjiri. Let's ask one last question, guys. We're gonna let you go after that, Manjiri. We had Radhika who asked a very good question. Let me show you this. If I start communicating with my pet and he tells me something and I don't agree with him, then I say something else. What will this hamper our relationship if there's disagreement?
Beautiful. Radhika, good question. I think also a lot of people tell communicators, tell my dog not to do this, okay? Tell my dog not to do this. If by telling things would change, humans, we as people would have also been very different. But if the animal tells you something that you don't necessarily agree with, it is a matter of us asking the animal for guidance on how he would guide us to bring about that change in our life. Friction and issues in relationships probably unfold only in the human space, not in the human and animal space. Animals are extremely understanding of us. If he tells you something and you're not too sure how to go about, or you don't agree, ask that animal for guidance, saying, dude, you brought this up. I don't agree with it fully. How can you help me understand this concept a little better? If that
great. We have suddenly there's a plethora of questions coming in. We may indulge. So
sure.
Siddharth Hemchandra has asked, and it's a good question. It's, I'm attracted to the outdoors. I have spent a lot of time in the outdoors. You have been basically doing that for most of your life. Do you believe that we as nature, wildlife lovers, mountain lovers, are a bit more inclined towards these things? How does one draw someone who's not used to something like this, like wildlife? So, I mean, I guess that is mostly for people who don't really get out that much, who don't want to. So it's again, how do you deal with the criticism, and how do you deal with this?
Sure. I think I'll go back to that very basic question of bread, or the analogy I gave of bread. Probably what somebody who is gravitating towards outdoors and nature is getting from there, the person who's sitting indoors is maybe getting it from some other mode or media, maybe through the books, maybe through YouTube channels, maybe through phone conversations with friends. Maybe they're receiving the same thing, the channels may be different. Also, you realize people will plan holidays based on a certain element that's meant to balance them. For example, there are some people who only plan a holiday to a beach, whereas their partner wants to go to the mountain. Maybe the beach is what is required for this individual, or the water element is required for this individual to balance themselves out, and the earth element and air element is required by the other partner. So it is up to these two people to understand that we can alternate, we can ideate and take one holiday here and one holiday here, so both of us feel balance in the relationship. But to answer Siddharth's question very simply, probably what you are getting from the outdoors, so you're buying bread from shop A and B, and the other person also needs the bread but is buying it from shop C and D. Maybe they're getting what they require. So probably the easier and the quicker we come to this understanding, maybe more seamless the relationship is, rather than friction based, if we're wanting to pull somebody into that. And when this person's time is right, he or she will gravitate towards the outdoors themselves when they are ready to receive what there is.
This is great, fantastic. Thank you so much, Manjiri.
Guys,
thanks for taking the time. I know you have your schedule is packed. Our audience members have been fantastic. They have asked so many questions. I really apologize. I couldn't answer all of them. And if I missed some, please contact Manjiri. Her information is here. She's on Instagram, Earthwise, and Earthwise Pune on Instagram and Facebook. Please send her an email. Please contact her directly. If you have very specific questions, she's more than happy to help you out. Send it to her fast because she gets booked up really soon. I asked her and she said, you talk to me in June and I'll be able to help you out. So guys,
don't make it sound like that, Karan. No, it's just the time difference.
I understand, but you know what it is that there are a lot of people who need help, and you are a guide, and you can see you're like a beacon. for everybody, and that's very important. And we are very happy to have you. This has been the highlight of my evening so far, to have someone
Thank
like
you
you
for
on
having
this
me.
thing. And you know, we a lot of people have been asking about Indrajit. Before we let you go, a lot of people have asked if Indrajit would be is he's a communicator as well, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
maybe we can work something out, guys. Stay tuned. This is a question I asked Manjiri right now in front of all of you chaps, because you asked me to ask her. So I have done that, and we will communicate and we'll see what happens, guys. No promises.
Bilkul,
We would love
bilkul.
to have people here from Earthwise. They are fantastic human beings. Follow them on Instagram, follow them on Facebook, contact them, and they will be able to help you guys out. Manjiri, thank you so much for your time. It was
Thank
a
you, Karan, for this opportunity. And I can't see everybody who's been posting, but I appreciate each one of you for your time and energy and contributions and questions, and that's what makes it so fun. So thank you once
Thank
again.
you. Thank you, Manjari. Okay, you take care. I'll see you soon, hopefully.
Yes, hopefully. Thank you. Bye bye.